Helen?
No.
Helen, are you hurt?
Do I have to tell you how this works?
Do you think I'm a hero? I am not a hero.
Lawyer's all yours.
On second thought,
I'd like to kill you. They want me to run. Then I'm gonna finish this.
You're a little rusty, Mr. Reacher.
I have nothing to lose. If you're smart, that scares you.
He doesn't care about the law. He doesn't care about proof. He only cares about what's right.
Okay, so that should have been some of the trailer for Jack Reacher. This is the new film starring Tom Cruise as Jack Reacher, a kind of former army military cop person who's now a drifter who basically takes on he takes on the law by not hunting. He knows how to take down trained killers because he is kind of one. And the movie, it revolves around an investigation into what appears to be a random sniping occurrence where several people were murdered by a sniper, and Jack Reacher comes in to kind of investigate what happened and what might have really went on, which leads him to facing off against some nefarious foes that include a villainous Werner Herzog. So with all that said, let's start with Mark this time. Mark, what did you think of Jack Reacher?
Well, I went in with pretty much, basically zero expectations. I didn't really plan on seeing it to begin with, but we had kind of a shorter or lackluster weekend here as far as releases.
Mark, you could say he just really wanted to be on the podcast. You could say it.
That's why. When you mentioned seeing that instead of This Is 40, and then I saw This Is 40 anyway, I said, well, now I better go see it so I can be part of the podcast. Okay. But and I might be being too sensitive about the opening, which was incredibly intense and well done. But it was pretty hard to watch this shortly after what took place in Connecticut. For me, at least, I kept thinking about that during that scene, and especially there's one target running around with a child, and so that was kind of, for me at least, was a little bit tough to sit through. Watching somebody gun down innocent bystanders and whatnot. But when I was finally able to put that scene behind me, and it was a good scene, so I hate to take it away from it, but it was, once I could get over that feeling, I kind of enjoyed the film for what it was. I don't think it's going to be remembered as a great movie in a little while, a year or two. It's one that, is still a lot of fun the first go around, though. It's typical action movie with some fun little crime solving going on. So I enjoyed it. I just don't think it's going to be anything I ever see again, but I enjoyed it.
Kevin?
Yeah, I actually didn't really plan on seeing it at all because of all the trailers. I didn't really know what it was about. And quite frankly, can we discuss the fact that if you say Jack Reacher fast, it sounds like you're saying Jack Preacher? So I was like, ooh, is it supernatural? Is there going to be monsters in it? That seems more appealing. But I ended up having to go see it so I could review it for Edge. And I actually had the same reaction that you did, Mark. Mm-hmm. The opening scene was really hard. In fact, I kept on thinking to myself, why are they not delaying this movie?
Right. Right.
But again, you put it aside, and then of course they have to show it again from a different angle, and that was, right. Please stop showing this. But I really enjoyed it too. And I don't, I'm not a big Tom Cruise fan anymore, but I thought he was actually kind of charming in it in his own weird stoic way. And I was just kind of fascinated by the way he figured things out. I don't know. I was really entertained. I thought it was really well directed. And had a lot of weird humor. Like that one scene in the bathroom, I think is worth the admission price. When those two guys bungle trying to beat him up in the house. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's hilarious. It was hilarious.
Yeah. I'll say I saw this movie before the tragedy that happened last week, and so like not to take away from that scene, or it's certainly not that situation, but like watching that scene, it is effectively chilling, regardless of kind of real world events that have taken place around it. And what I like about the movie is that it does take violence seriously. Like it doesn't, especially in like the first half where you're, you know, focused on the mystery aspect of why this happened and like who the people involved were. Like it takes that aspect seriously, and that's something I can appreciate as opposed to something that's more, I guess, cartoony. Which is not necessarily a bad thing, but just in terms of the tone of this film, I liked that was the way it went. And it does feel like an R-rated film that was turned into a PG-13 movie. And just because of its sensibilities there. With that said, I do wish this movie was pulpier. And because it feels like it's on the verge of being like a very pulpy action movie that could be like 90 minutes starring Jason Statham, but instead it's 130 minutes of procedural with Tom Cruise. And so it feels overlong, yet it's still quite entertaining. And I think it's because Tom Cruise is quite solid in the film, and he has a way of, like you said, figuring things out that's entertaining, especially in a movie that's, you know, mostly a procedural. There's very little action. There's little action in this movie. There's good action in this movie. I think the action's solid, especially kind of the bungled bathroom brawl, which was hilarious. The ending action scene, which I really enjoy, and the car chase that takes place, which is, when you think about it, entirely superfluous, but it's so damn good, like it's hard to let it look past. And I should note that this movie's directed and adapted. It's directed by Christopher McQuarrie. Christopher McQuarrie won the Oscar for writing Usual Suspects. He also does a lot of kind of touch-ups on scripts in Hollywood, and he has a good relationship with Tom Cruise, apparently. He wrote Valkyrie as well. But he also wrote and directed the movie The Way of the Gun, which Abe and I are big fans of. It's one of my favorite movies, actually. And The Way of the Gun, that movie has a car chase in it that's entirely in slow motion. Like, there's people literally putting their feet outside the car and kind of pushing it on the ground. Like, there's a really interesting car chase take, and it has an amazing shootout at the end. This movie is like his big budget version where he's able to do a full-on car chase and have like a crazy action sequence. And it's like, I really like that Christopher McQuarrie's been able to, he's been promoted to making this big budget Tom Cruise action, not even big budget, it's only like $60 million, but like a larger scale action movie. And he does do a good job. I really like his direction in this film, and I like how he kind of approached it. It has a very not old-fashioned, but like kind of 90s action approach to it. And the action's very, you know, you can watch it and not get a headache from it. The camera is very, you know, smooth. It's not going for quick edits and all that stuff. It feels like a comprehensible action movie that happens to star Tom Cruise, who is not the 6'5", 220 Jack Reacher from the books by Lee Child, but he fits the role well. I think he does a good job. I do like his performance in the movie. He has kind of this rigid sense of humor, and
it's your last chance to walk away.
Are you kidding? It's 5 against 1.
It's 3 against 1.
How do you figure?
Once I take out the leader, which is you, I'll have to contend with 1 or 2 enthusiastic wingmen. The last 2 guys, I always won. Remember, you wanted this. Okay. You're okay. Get up. Oh! Okay. Now we know who's who. Let's get this done.
Something about Tom Cruise that I found interesting in this movie, he doesn't smile and he doesn't run. Right? I think besides maybe like running for cover at one point, he doesn't run in this movie. He's not like dead out sprinting, and he doesn't like wave that smile around. I feel
he smiled more than he did in Mission Impossible, though.
I'll give you that. He did smile more than Mission Impossible. That's
not much, but it's, you know, it's something.
Also, I really like Werner Herzog in this movie because of how kind of terrible he is. And it's not like terrible, but more like he seems like a Bond villain, right? Like, that's what he's playing, right? Every line he says is like an inch within his life. He's like, he's playing this character called the Zek, who is like, a Siberian prisoner or something, and he had to chew his own fingers off in order to survive. And just describing that's amazing. But like, the way he talks in the movie, he's like, if you had to chew your fingers out or take a bullet to the head, which one would you choose? And he has this like
That was good. That was really good.
That's my Herzog.
I'm impressed.
I'm gonna do my Herzog more often. That's gonna be that's almost as good as my Denzel. All right, okay. Like they, but
All I could think of, honestly, through the whole, anytime he opened his mouth was the last 10 minutes of Cave of Forgotten Dreams where he talked about the damn alligators. I was like, what's happening? I don't even really understand his character. I didn't really understand why he was there. I just didn't get it. But he entertained me every time his blind eye showed up. I enjoyed it.
He should be more Grizzly Man. We could not show this to anybody ever.
It's awful.
But yeah, like that's why I wish the movie was kind of pulpier, because there's because I like this movie overall, but it does have a clear issue, which is what I've already mentioned. It takes the violence seriously. It's a serious movie, but at the same time, it has these comedic elements that make it entertaining, and a character like Werner Herzog, who's in a different movie than everybody else is. If he shows up in the next Daniel Craig Bond movie, I'll be fine with that. I can't wait to see that movie. But the fact is, you have this strange, like, procedural Law and Order movie of Tom Cruise investigating the sniper action that's horrible. And then you also have this movie of Werner Herzog and his henchman played by Jai Courtney, who's also pretty effective, I think, as the sniper and the main baddie besides Werner Herzog. And they're in the Jason Statham Transporter movie, and like Tom Cruise is somewhere else, like in the serious movie. So blending them together, it works just because there needs to be a confrontation. But it is like, how serious are we taking it? Like, should we be pulpy or should we not? It seemed had a bit of an identity crisis, I think, of how far to go with which angle of tone on the movie.
Yeah. There's that scene too with Rosamund Pike and him in the hotel room, and he's got his shirt off, and there's always these like, are they going to kiss? Are they not going to kiss? What's going to happen? And I felt like that could have been played up more. It almost seemed, I was almost a little embarrassed because it wasn't really working, but I think it could have been had they did it a different way. I'm not sure how they could have done that.
I do like that Tom Cruise is playing a drifter, and he's Tom Cruise, so it's like, how charismatic and like handsome and like talented can this drifter be? Like he's one hell of a drifter. Like, he's like the Pretender or the Fugitive, like.
And he has no clothes except for one.
Yeah, he has one outfit that he bought in like a thrift store, right? Like he bought like some clothes at the thrift store, and he just arrives
and he holds up his bus ticket very, very specifically every time he gets on a bus.
So he has like this mystique that's created about him, but he's he's Tom Cruise, so it's a fun kind of balance, I guess.
Jack Reacher is a ghost. No driver's license, no credit cards, no cell phone, email, nothing.
Can you at least tell me who he is?
Well, I can tell you who he was. Blood military, born and raised on bases abroad. His first trip to the United States was to attend West Point. 4 years later, he ships out for good. After a literal lifetime in the military, he just up and quits.
So, how do we find this Reacher?
Obviously, you don't find this guy unless he wants to be found.
Excuse me, sir. There's a Jack Reacher here to see you.
So who would have been a better Jack Reacher? You think Tom Hardy?
I've actually been told Gerard Butler is someone that.
Oh yeah.
That's someone that was suggested to me by someone that doesn't want to see this movie because they really love the books and they love the Jack Reacher character and they just don't want to see Tom Cruise playing that person. Okay. But I've heard Gerard Butler's name be tossed around, which I can see fitting just because he's taller and he has a similar charisma to Tom Cruise, I would say. Although he's choosing way worse movies. Oh my God, playing keeps. But
yeah, that poor thing.
Yeah.
I don't know who I would cast in that role either, but Tom Hardy's not a bad choice.
Hugh Jackman.
I thought about Hugh Jackman too because of his size. Yeah. But, Tom Cruise didn't do a bad job.
As the old adage is that I say Michael Fassbender can do anything, so, Michael Fassbender, but not.
He's a little slight.
I could agree. He can build himself up. He's Michael Fassbender. He can do anything.
He can do anything.
If it's Michael Fassbender and Kate Winslet, they can do anything. But what about the rest of this?
Kate Winslet as Jack Reacher.
There you go. Kate. Okay. Kate Blanchett.
Now that's a movie in a corset.
Kate Blanchett in Jack Reacher's Not There. The supporting cast in this movie. Now, okay, one thing about this movie, it does, especially the second half, it does hit like cliche territory. Like you have the damsel in distress, and you have like a mole twist kind of thing going on and various things. But I think the cast makes it better than it needs to be. Like I think Rosamund Pike, despite some of the dialogue she's given and situations she's put in, I think she's quite good. And I think like David Oyelowo, I believe is his name, the other officer, and like Richard Jenkins is always good in things. And I've already mentioned Werner Herzog, and Robert Duvall shows up too in a fun kind of role. And I think this cast makes this movie, which in lesser hands would be kind of, where if it was that 90-minute Jason Statham movie, it'd be lean and mean, so you wouldn't, I guess, find as many issue with it just because it doesn't last too long. But as an 130-minute movie, I think it could have ran into problems if it had, kind of lesser people involved. But I do think that the cast elevates the material.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah, the supporting cast has definitely helped move it along.
And I go back to the look of it too. I just really liked the look. It reminded me of like Collateral, a little bit like Drive.
Yeah, Drive came to mind actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think it has the direction's not showy. I think it's
right.
There's certainly, I guess, elements in it that give off a certain like, hey, the director's hand was on this scene. But yeah, it doesn't feel like a movie that's overly directed. It feels like it has that kind of 90s old actiony approach to a movie where it just kind of lets things play out in a natural sort of way. Like that car chase is like really cool because it's simple. I think it's you and like the actors are all in it too. I know Tom Cruise did all his own stunt driving in this movie. I'm aware of that. And like the fact that the camera's on his face a lot, or like focused on him, and you were watching these cars barrel through, were they Pittsburgh, right? Or
yeah, I think so.
And it's a cool procedural film, I think, and that worked to this movie's advantage, I would say.
We'll see if it does well enough to do more, because whether they're like 17 books or something.
Yeah.
And they left it where you could see another one coming.
For sure. I'd like to see Tom Cruise drift into other towns and play. But I mean, if it does set up a franchise, I'd be happy to see more Jack Reacher films. I would look for it. And this is the kind of thing where, this is a franchise starter, so I can only hope that it would get, better from here. And I already like this film quite a bit. So like that, it works in its favor, I guess, that it could hope potentially do well and, lead to another franchise for Tom Cruise to be starring in on a semi-yearly basis. But I wouldn't mind it, I guess. I really love Ghost Protocol a lot. Like that movie is just a lot of fun in terms of what it's trying to do. But this is a kind of a different sort of, way for Tom Cruise to play it. And if he does pursue it, I'd like seeing more. All right, I think we've given enough semi-praise for Jack Reacher enough, so let's get to our rating. Pretty decent. That's what we stand on. Pretty decent with some great moments. But let's get to our rating. Same rating scale: IMAX theater, Dollar theater, Netflix, HBO TV, or forget about it. Mark?
I'd say probably Dollar theater.
Kevin?
I'm torn between IMAX and Dollar, so I'm going to say IMAX. Just for fun.
All right, cool. I would say theater for sure.